Years ago, I worked with an entrepreneur who's one of the most ambitious and energetic people that I've ever met. He hired me to help package his expertise into a premium program and launch it. I shared part of his story back in episode 4 on how we repositioned his messaging and marketing by digging deep into his values, his beliefs, and bigger why. And that shift was a turning point that transformed his struggling $47 membership into a thriving high ticket offer and eventually became the foundation of a seven-figure business. But there was part of his story that I haven't shared with you. And this piece is just as important as the first one. From our very first conversation, something about him stood out. Every time that I brought up our path to hitting our enrollment numbers, making sure that we're checking all the right boxes to fill all those seats, he'd say something along the lines of, I don't care how many people enroll. Now, at first, I thought that maybe he was joking. Maybe he's just trying to sound laid back, like, no big deal. But as weeks went on, I realized that he wasn't joking at all. He was actually dead serious. And look, he wasn't some carefree, go with the flow kind of guy either. He was incredibly driven. He absolutely wanted to build a business that grew and scaled. He definitely cares greatly about success, and he certainly liked making money just like the rest of us. But he didn't seem to care too much about this one particular launch. Now, most people, when they hire someone like me, they want my help with packaging, promoting, and of course, selling their expertise. And of course, there's always some conversation and definitely sessions about how we're going to structure and deliver that offer. But you know what? Most people, they kind of want to glaze over or hurry over those parts, but not him. Actually, he was really fixated on the thing he couldn't stop thinking about was the offer itself, how it was structured, how he was going to deliver it, and of course, most importantly, how well it delivered results. For him, 90% of his focus was on making sure that this thing actually works. He went over every single little detail over and over again, every part of his offer, questioning, refining, trying to anticipate what might trip people up, what questions they might have, and how he could make it easier, clearer, and more effective. So for him, it wasn't about getting people into the door. It was about making sure that he's getting them results. And so when launch finally happened, it was a huge success. We filled all those seats faster than either of us expected. But here's the part that really stuck with me. You see, for most people, what they would do in that situation, they would be celebrating the success of hitting that number. They'd be excited about reaching that enrollment milestone. But what he celebrated and was excited about was the opportunity to work and help the people who had enrolled in his program. More than anything else, he was genuinely thrilled to work with them to see if his offer would deliver the transformation that he had envisioned. And of course, that's when his real obsession kicked in. After every session, he'd call me. We'd go over what worked, what didn't, what needed to change. He was constantly thinking about how to help the people who were struggling, how to make things clearer, how to tweak the program so that no one was left behind. And by the time he was halfway through delivering the program, he was already making changes. Every question a client asked became a new point of analysis for him. He'd be asking, why did this question come up? Why did one person get it instantly? Why another person struggled? And more importantly, how can I explain this better? How can I structure it differently? And how can I deliver it in a way that guarantees success? Over the 2 years that we worked together, I saw this pattern over and over again. Every launch, every offer, and every tweak that he made came from the same place, which is this relentless focus on ensuring that his clients got results and solving any and every problem or obstacle that might prevent them from getting there, from getting those results. Unsurprisingly, many of those clients stuck with him for the long term, reinvesting every single time that he rolled out a new offer, a new solution. Now, about a year later, after I started working with this client, I was hired by someone else, completely in a different industry, and totally different personality. If my first guy was all energy and intensity, this guy was the polar opposite. He was very calm and measured and almost like grandfatherly in the way that he spoke. But the goal was the same, to package his expertise into a premium offer and launch it with 20 students. And very quickly, I started noticing something very familiar. Whenever I brought up our plan as we worked towards the launch, the details of ensuring a successful launch and hitting our enrollment goals, he'd just smile and say, I'm not worried about that. This is going to be amazing. Okay. So at first I thought maybe he's just being overly optimistic. Like, sure, confidence is great, but you still have to fill the program, right? But as we kept working together, I realized that his focus wasn't on the numbers at all. What kept him up at night wasn't how do I get 20 people to enroll into this program? It was how do I make sure that this program actually works for those people? That's where all of his energy went. He obsessed over the delivery, how to structure the materials so no one got left behind, how to break things down step by step so it wasn't just information, but a clear, actionable process that people could follow and get results from. Between our meetings, our sessions, I get messages from him. I get notes, tweaks, updates. He was constantly refining and adjusting and making sure that everything was as simple, as understandable, and as effective as possible. And when we launched, we filled all 20 seats and we did it in just 3 days. But much like the first client that I told you about, here's what stood out to me. Filling all the seats in record time wasn't what excited him. For him, the launch was just a starting point. The real focus, the thing that actually mattered to him, was what happened next. The second those 20 students were inside, his entire energy shifted. He was laser focused on delivering an incredible experience, giving every ounce of his energy to gathering feedback, making adjustments, and ensuring that every single person there walked away with results. And that's when it really hit me. There is an obvious and consistent pattern among the entrepreneurs that I've worked with, even though they're from very different industries and very different backgrounds. And the pattern is this. The ones who take off quickly, who build real momentum, and who create businesses that keep growing without constantly having to start over, share these two key traits. The first one is a relentless commitment to solving the right problem. And the second one is detachment from short-term outcomes. That's what I want to talk to you about today. These two key traits that any of us can learn, can cultivate, and embody. And if you're serious about thriving as an entrepreneur, these are the traits that you need to focus on. So the very first trait, as I said, is a relentless commitment to solving the right problem. Entrepreneurs with this trait who build and predictably grow their businesses don't start by asking, what can I sell? Instead, they ask, what problem needs solving? And why does this problem exist in the first place? And how can I solve it better? And of course, what's the most effective way to deliver real results for those people? And here's the crucial part. They never stop asking these questions. They're relentless. Every launch, every client interaction, every single piece of feedback becomes fuel for improvement. Their solution isn't something that they create once and then package it up and throw it on a shelf. It's alive, constantly evolving, growing, and adapting based on real experiences, the real challenges, and the real needs of their prospects and clients. Look, most people, based on my experience, rush through packaging their knowledge into a program, a course, or a service. And then once it's done, they shift their entire focus to getting eyeballs on it, to promoting it and selling it. I know plenty of coaches who are still trying to sell the exact same solution that they launched 10 years ago by just repackaging it with a fresh coat of paint. And they wonder why it's not working. But entrepreneurs who thrive, they understand that the market is always changing. Their audience is always evolving. And so their solution must evolve with it. Let me also explain why this is such a good trait to cultivate. When you're obsessed with solving a real problem, you're not just selling something, you're creating something that truly matters. You don't rush to package up a perfect solution and then slap a pretty bow on top and switch into full on sales mode. You don't just launch and leave. You launch, you learn, you tweak, you refine, and you relaunch a better and more comprehensive solution every time. And you listen deeply to your audience, even when what you hear might mean rethinking your entire approach and redoing all that you've done so far. And by the way, this is where the second trait, detachment from short term outcomes, comes into the picture. When you're fixated on getting immediate results right now, your goal becomes all about short term success. But here's the part that everyone misses. Quick wins now will almost always come at the expense of getting to that sustained and consistent and long term success later. And look, believe me that I get it. Most entrepreneurs put an enormous amount of pressure on themselves to succeed as quickly as possible. If they have a launch coming up, they push really, really hard. They put everything else on hold. They tell themselves that this has to work. This has to be the one that changes everything. And in that moment, it feels like everything is riding on this one outcome. So what do? They grind. They sacrifice everything else and they go all in. And let's say that it works. Let's say that they do hit their goal. What happens next? There's always going to be another one, another goal, another launch, another next revenue milestone, the next thing they have to hit to keep the momentum going, the next all or nothing win that they have to get in order for their business to stay alive. And just like that, they're right back where they started, putting their life on hold all over again. Now, what happens when they don't hit their goal? Well, that's when burnout creeps in. That's when people start questioning everything. They start questioning, well, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I should just quit altogether. And you know what? For new entrepreneurs, this cycle of putting pressure on short-term outcomes is what keeps them frozen. They're so afraid of failing that they hesitate to take any action at all. Instead, they get stuck overthinking, tweaking, delaying, and telling themselves that I'm not ready yet. I need this thing to be perfect first. And unfortunately, that's where they stay, stuck. Until you detach from that obsession over quick wins now, that's where you'll stay. Here's the thing that a lot of people misunderstand about detachment. Detaching from short-term outcomes isn't about caring less. It's about caring differently. It's about shifting your focus away from how many people enrolled to how do I make this the most valuable experience possible? So instead of obsessing over hitting some magic number, you focus on delivering results, knowing that when you do, the right people will come and your business will grow. When you stop chasing quick wins and focus on building something extraordinary, your success takes care of itself. Your clients get better results. When that happens, your reputation grows. And when that happens, your business becomes sustainable because people keep coming back for more. And most importantly, you stop feeling the pressure to be perfect from day one because the truth is there is no finish line. Here's something else to think about also. The best entrepreneurs don't resist feedback. They actually crave it. They don't avoid mistakes. They learn from them. So instead of obsessing over perfection, they go all in. And when things don't work as expected or as they had hoped, they ask questions like, what can I learn from this failure? And how can I turn this feedback into a better experience next time? They know that entrepreneurship is an iterative process. They know their work will never be done. And they don't see that as frustrating either. They see it as an opportunity to get better every single day. And so as a result, instead of making your entire business ride on this one moment, you create something that truly makes an impact. And coincidentally, that impact is exactly what creates loyal customers, repeat clients, and a business that thrives in the long term. Once you shift your attention from selling to serving, You actually hit your revenue goals much faster because instead of chasing numbers, you're creating something meaningful that people want to be part of. You're building trust. You're making it impossible for the right people to ignore what you're doing. And this all ties back to something that I've experienced firsthand, what became the foundation of my service first framework. I was making the same two mistakes that we're talking about here. I was definitely obsessing over short term outcomes and definitely spending more time worrying about how to sell rather than how to serve. And let me tell you, these two things kill more entrepreneurial dreams than a lack of marketing knowledge ever will. All that being said, I have to be 100% honest with you here. While being obsessed with solving the right problem has become second nature to me, letting go of the short-term outcomes is still something that I have to work on consciously every single day. Right now, as I'm recording this episode, I have to actively remind myself that it's not about how many downloads this episode gets. I have to remind myself that even if just one person listens and walks away with exactly what they needed to hear today, then I've done my job, then I've succeeded. And every time I do a live serve event, I have to remind myself that it doesn't matter if 3 people show up or if 300 people show up. Because if those 3 people walk away with something that they can actually use to move forward in their business, then I've done my job. Now, I won't lie to you and say that this is easy because it's not. But here's what I do know. When I let go of the pressure, everything flows better. The stress completely disappears. My anxiety goes away. And suddenly everything just comes together. My intention is a lot more clear. My message lands a lot better. And ironically, that's when the enrollments come in as well. Because this is how it works. When you stop obsessing over getting something and you start focusing on giving something, everything shifts. Look, the brands that grow, the ones that last, the ones that truly change lives are built by people who show up to serve first. Just like those entrepreneurs that I told you earlier, who build their success not by chasing numbers, but by obsessing with delivering results. Your business will thrive when you shift your focus as well. When you put every ounce of your energy into solving the right problem, into serving first, the numbers will take care of themselves. So here's my challenge for you. Next time you feel the pressure of hitting that number, whether it's enrollments, revenue, or social media followers, I want you to pause for a moment. Instead of letting that pressure consume you, take a step back and then ask yourself, what actually matters here? Give yourself some space to really think about that answer. What actually matters here? Because if you're only measuring success by the numbers, you're always gonna feel like you're chasing something that's out of reach. No matter how much you grow, it'll never feel like enough. Here's something that I want to leave you with that, in my opinion, is a game changer. The businesses that last, the ones that thrive year after year, they're not built by constantly chasing success. They're built by showing up, by serving, and by delivering so much value that success just becomes inevitable. Thank you for listening to this episode of Marketing Your Truth. I hope this conversation gave you a new way to think about success, not as something that you have to chase, but as something that naturally follows when you focus on serving at your highest level. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Send me a message on LinkedIn. Let me know your biggest takeaway, or share this episode with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed, because in the next episode, we're going to tackle something that keeps so many entrepreneurs stuck, which is the cycle of consuming more and doing less. Until then, remember this: the fastest way to grow isn't by doing more, it's by going deeper.